I'm not a vengeful person. Not by nature. Anyway, I'm a history teacher, a wife of 20 years, and the mother of a daughter who is everything I ever dreamed I could raise. We live in a peaceful suburb just outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a 2-story colonial with white shutters and a wraparound porch that Daniel, my husband, insists needs repainting every spring. My name is Claire Whitmore, and I've never really thought of myself as someone who carries grudges. But when it came to what my mother-in-law did to Ava's graduation dress, something in me cracked. Ava is my only child, and she's extraordinary. She's one of those rare girls who manages to be both brilliant and grounded. The kind who volunteers at the library and still manages a perfect 4.0. She was valedictorian of Milburn High's graduating class this year, the first in the Whitmore family to achieve it. And she earned a full scholarship to Princeton, yes, Princeton with a double major in political science and ethics already in her sights. I watched her work tirelessly for years, staying up past midnight, tutoring classmates, turning down invitations to parties and dances, all to build a future she could claim as her own. She skipped prom, even though she could have gone, just to finish a research project for a state-level competition. That's the kind of young woman she is. So when Eva finally decided to treat herself to something special for graduation, I supported her. She chose a stunning midnight blue satin gown that shimmered slightly under the light. It had an off-the-shoulder neckline and a long, elegant train that gave her the kind of poised grace you'd expect from a debutante in a Jane Austen novel. It wasn't traditional for graduation. No, but Eva had never been traditional. She was making a statement. That dress was her armor. It was her reward. It was a reminder that she could be both brilliant and beautiful, driven and dignified. And I was happy to pay the $750 for it, even though it meant cutting a few corners elsewhere in our budget. I didn't hesitate. She deserved it. Then came Judith. Judith Whitmore is my husband's mother and a walking embodiment of passive-aggressive refinement. She's lived alone since her husband passed in 2011 in a sprawling colonial mansion in Charleston, South Carolina. Her home is filled with antique furniture, crystal vases, and portraits of ancestors who never smiled. She's the kind of woman who wears pressed linen to breakfast and reminds you she once dined with a bush, though never specifies which one. She has strong opinions, most of them outdated, and she believes that no event is complete without her input or interference. When Judith first heard about Ava's dress, her voice dropped to that syrupy, judgmental tone she reserves for what she calls fashion disasters. "Oh, Claire," she said during one of our weekly calls, "blue? For a graduation? She'll look like a bruise on stage. Why not something floral? Something light and hopeful?" I gritted my teeth and gave my usual, polite chuckle. Eva chose it herself. It suits her. Judith hummed thoughtfully the same way she had when I told her we weren't christening Eva in the Episcopal Church, and I could already feel the storm forming. She wasn't originally supposed to come to the ceremony. She'd been dealing with arthritis flare-ups, or so she said, and told us not to worry. But then, 2 days before the event, she called to announce she'd booked a last-minute flight. She would be arriving the evening before graduation and expected someone to pick her up at the airport. She wants to help. "Mom," Eva had said when I looked visibly annoyed, "just let her come." I nodded. I didn't want to stress Eva out the night before the biggest day of her life. I told myself I could handle Judith. She arrived carrying a Louis Vuitton weekender and a carry-on suitcase full of unsolicited advice. Within 30 minutes of stepping into our home, she'd critiqued the air conditioning, frowned at the guest room mattress, and suggested we remove some of the more youthful books from the coffee table. She made a comment about how college girls today dress like they're headed to cocktail bars and gave Eva a side glance that made my stomach churn. The next morning, graduation day, I discovered the real betrayal. At some point during the night, Judith had gone into Ava's closet, taken the dress, and brought it to what she called a professional pressing service. She mentioned it casually over breakfast, sipping Earl Grey like it was just another thoughtful errand. "I couldn't let her wear it all wrinkled," she said. Besides, they hemmed the train a bit. It was far too long. It would have dragged through the stadium grass. Very unrefined. My heart stopped. Hemmed it? Judith waved her hand like I was being overly dramatic. Yes, dear. I also had the neckline adjusted. That off-the-shoulder looked so suggestive. This is a high school graduation, not a gala. I stared at her, my fork frozen midair. You altered Ava's dress. Without asking her, she didn't flinch. It's just a dress, Claire. I paid for the alterations myself. You should be thanking me. I didn't thank her. I didn't say anything, actually, because Eva hadn't heard yet, and I didn't want her to wake up to this news. But something in me began to boil not just with anger, but with the unmistakable knowledge that something had to change. Judith had crossed a line, and when Eva saw that dress, when she realized what had been done to the symbol of her years of hard work and quiet resilience, it broke something. And Judith? She thought there would be no consequences. She had no idea what was coming. Graduation morning began like a scene out of a cozy family movie, sunlight pouring through the blinds, the smell of toasted bagels and hazelnut coffee drifting through the kitchen, and the cheerful thud of Moose's tail against the hardwood floor as he trotted from room to room. Eva was in the upstairs bathroom curling her hair, humming along to a playlist she'd been perfecting for months. One she planned to use on the drive to Princeton in the fall. She sounded calm, focused, joyful. Daniel, my husband, was pacing the hallway in his socks, trying to remember where he had stashed his brown leather dress shoes. I teased him as I handed him a cup of coffee. Same place they were when you couldn't find them at our anniversary dinner. He laughed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. The lines around his eyes deeper than they used to be, but filled with warmth. I felt proud, nervous, too, but mostly proud. Today was Ava's day, the culmination of 18 years of sacrifice, perseverance, and grace, and she had earned every moment of it. Around 9:15 a.m., I headed upstairs with a small black velvet box in hand. Inside were the pearl earrings I wore to my own graduation from Smith College, a tradition I hoped Eva would carry forward. As I knocked on her door, I imagined her twirling in front of the mirror, slipping into that incredible satin gown and beaming at her reflection. Eva, I called softly. I brought you something. She opened the door, smiling, her makeup half finished. Her eyes were bright, her cheeks glowing with anticipation. She took the box and opened it carefully, her smile growing. Mom, they're perfect. I smiled. Let's see the dress. She turned to the hanging garment bag, unzipped it slowly, and pulled the gown out, then froze. So did I dot it was the same blue satin? But it wasn't the same dress. The neckline had been completely altered, now a stiff, awkward boat neck with cheap-looking white lace stitched over the shoulders. The train, that beautiful flowing train that made Eva feel like she was stepping into her future like royalty, was gone. The fabric now ended abruptly, the hem uneven and resting just above her knees. It looked like a clearance bridesmaid's dress from a wedding no one wanted to remember. Eva held the hanger in silence, her mouth slightly open. What happened? She whispered. I couldn't answer. I was stunned, staring at the mutilated version of what was supposed to be the centerpiece of her day. Then came the scent, strong, floral, unmistakably Judith. And within seconds, she was standing in the doorway holding a mimosa in one hand, dressed in a peach pantsuit that matched her lipstick a little too perfectly. Oh, that? She chirped, motioning to the dress. I had it altered, dear. Much more suitable for a daytime event, don't you think? The original was far too dramatic. That train would have dragged in the grass. Very impractical. Eva turned slowly. You altered it. Without asking me, Judith chuckled. Eva, sweetheart, it's just a dress. Her voice was light, like this was all a silly misunderstanding. But it wasn't. This wasn't forgetting to RSVP or buying the wrong flavor of cake. This was sabotage. This was control dressed up as concern. And the worst part? She genuinely didn't believe she had done anything wrong. I watched Ava's expression shift from confusion to disbelief, then harden into something I didn't see off in fury. She said nothing, just laid the dress across the bed carefully, like it might fall apart if handled too harshly. I was still processing when Daniel walked in, adjusting his tie. He took one look at the dress, then at Ava's face, and I saw the color drain from his cheeks. He didn't even need to ask. Judith was already halfway down the hallway, babbling something about how we should be thanking her. "Eva," Daniel said softly, walking toward her. "We can fix this." But Eva shook her head. "No, Dad, we can't. The ceremony starts in less than 2 hours. This is what I've got now." She stood up straighter. "I'll wear it. I'm not giving her the power to ruin this day." I wanted to say something, to tell her she didn't have to prove anything to anyone, but I knew better. This was Ava's decision, and I could only stand beside her. She got dressed in silence, doing her makeup with mechanical precision. I fastened the pearl earrings for her. She didn't cry. Not then. But when she looked in the mirror, she didn't smile either. The car ride to the stadium was quiet. Judith sat in the front, pointing out traffic signs and trying to make conversation about the landscaping. Eva stared out the window, her hands folded neatly in her lap. I held her hand for a moment, giving it a small squeeze. She squeezed back once. When we arrived, the stadium was buzzing. Parents with cameras, teachers checking clipboards, students in caps and gowns lining up behind the stage. Eva moved among them with poise. She gave polite waves to classmates, posed for a few photos with Lana, her best friend, and walked the red carpet aisle to her seat with her head held high. She gave the valedictorian speech without a single tremble in her voice. It was brilliant, funny, insightful, heartfelt. She ended with a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that brought tears to my eyes. "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." As she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she did so with elegance, her chin lifted, her shoulders square. She made that butchered dress look like a choice, not a consequence. The crowd applauded. I stood and clapped until my hands hurt. Judith clapped too, but softly, like she knew somewhere in that meticulously polished mind of hers that she hadn't won. That evening, back at the house, Eva changed into sweatpants and tied her hair up in a bun. We sat in the kitchen with a slice of leftover cake, and she finally spoke. "I'm not mad about the dress anymore," she said, "but I'm not letting it slide." And I believed her. Judith had no idea what she had just started, but by the end of that week, she would. The day after graduation felt like a quiet fog had settled over the house. The banners and streamers still hung over the fireplace. The leftover cake sat untouched in the fridge, and the bouquet of white peonies on the kitchen island was already starting to droop. Eva sat at the counter in her Princeton hoodie, hair tied up in a messy bun, slowly scrolling through the photos on her phone. I stood at the sink, washing out the mugs from the night before, stealing glances at her reflection in the window. Every few seconds, she swiped to a new image. One of her standing beside Lana, another of her walking across the stage, then one of our family, posed and smiling. But something about it, maybe the stiffness in Ava's posture, or the way she held her arms tightly against her sides, made it impossible to pretend the moment had gone untouched. "Anything good?" I asked gently, drying my hands with a dish towel. She didn't answer right away, just kept scrolling. Then she paused, turned the phone toward me, and showed a photo I hadn't seen yet. It was her, mid-speech, standing at the podium, sunlight gleaming off her earrings, but that terrible lace collar sitting like a weight around her shoulders. She turned the phone back toward herself. Her lips were pressed into a thin, determined line. "I want to do something," she said finally. I didn't ask what. I didn't need to. Her tone said everything. We weren't a family that indulged in pettiness. We never taught Eva revenge or retaliation. But this wasn't about getting even. This was about reclaiming something that had been taken from her without permission. It was about dignity. It was about sending a message that some lines can't be crossed without consequence. So we made a plan. It began with the dress, what was left of it. Anyway, Eva carried it back up to her room like she was holding a wounded animal. She laid it out on her bed and stared at it for a long time. The hem was jagged. The neckline, once elegant, was now a mismatched patchwork of itchy lace and poorly stitched seams. It wasn't just a ruined garment. It was an insult. She folded it slowly, precisely, and placed it into a clean white garment box from Nordstrom that I had saved in the hall closet. Then she took out a note card and wrote in her neat, measured handwriting, "Dear Grandma, thank you for the improvements to my graduation dress. I've enclosed it here, just for you since you designed it. I figured you'd want to keep it. I'll be wearing something entirely my own to my welcome brunch at Princeton. Warmest regards, Eva." We shipped it overnight to Judith's Charleston address. Eva paid for it herself $43.25 for express delivery and $750 in full insurance coverage. She made sure the label read "Sent from Eva Whitmore" in bold, capital letters. That would have been enough for most people. But Eva had something bigger in mind. The second part of the plan involved social media, something Judith never understood, which, in this case, was a gift. Eva and Lana worked side by side for hours, using a 3D rendering app Lana had learned through her fashion design internship. Together, they recreated Eva's original dress the way it was supposed to look, before the sabotage. Lana even used lighting software to mimic the exact setting of the graduation stage. Then, Eva filmed a 20-second video, no drama, no tears. Just her, standing tall in the digitally restored gown, her voice calm and sure. "I didn't get to wear the dress I earned, but I'll wear something even better to Princeton's welcome brunch and no one gets to change it but me. Hashtag my choice, hashtag graduation strong," she posted it that night. By the next morning, it had exploded. Within 12 hours, the video had 10,000 likes. By the second day, it had climbed to 37,000 and was being shared on TikTok, Instagram, even Twitter. Girls from other schools commented with their own stories of sabotaged dresses, unsupportive relatives, and last-minute fashion disasters. Milburn High's official account reposted the video with the caption, "Proud of you, Eva." It wasn't a rant. It wasn't a tantrum. It was pure Grace and McDrop in silk and satin. Still, we weren't quite finished. Daniel made the final move. It was around 6:30 the following evening when we sat down together at the dining table, me, Eva, and Daniel. The mood was calm, but something simmered beneath the surface. Daniel picked up his phone and dialed his mother's number, then set it to speaker. Judith answered on the third ring. "Well, I hope this isn't another surprise package," she said lightly, as if what she'd done had been quirky and harmless. "Mom," Daniel began, "we need to talk." I could hear her straighten up on the other end. Could imagine her wrapping her silk robe tighter round her waist. "Oh, about what? You crossed a line, and we're drawing some of our own now." There was a pause. "It was just a dress, Daniel," she replied coolly. "No," he said. "It was control. It was disrespect. And it's not the first time." "I was trying to help," she snapped. "That dress was gaudy, unfit for a high school event. It wasn't your call," Daniel cut in. His voice was firmer now, more resolute than I'd heard in years. "We've canceled your invitation to Ava's Princeton brunch. And Claire and I have agreed that you won't be staying with us over the holidays this year. We need space, silence." I could almost hear the sting of it, the gasp she was probably holding back. And then Eva leaned in. Her voice was soft, but sharp. "Grandma," she said, "next time you want to play dress up, find a doll. I'm not yours to style." Click. Daniel ended the call. No one said anything for a long time. And then Eva smiled for the first time since graduation. It wasn't about punishing Judith. Not really. It was about reminding ourselves that we had boundaries, power, and pride, and that no one, not even family, had the right to trample over them. Judith didn't call back. Not that night. Not the next. And honestly, we didn't miss her. That summer, Our house felt like it had finally exhaled. For the first time in years, there were no unsolicited opinions drifting in through the phone, no backhanded compliments hidden under lace-gloved hands, and no sharp silences that hung in the air like unspoken judgment. It was just us, me, Daniel, and Eva cooking, packing, laughing in the kitchen, and moving through our little Pennsylvania home like people who had earned their peace. The tension that had once simmered around holidays and family gatherings vanished. We didn't talk much about Judith after that phone call. Eva didn't mention the dress again, and Daniel, to his credit, respected the new boundary he'd helped draw. He didn't try to mediate or soften the blow. He stood firmly beside his daughter and me, knowing this wasn't about punishment. It was about protection. One warm Saturday morning in July, Eva and I went shopping in downtown Pittsburgh for her Princeton welcome brunch outfit. No, Judith. No lectures about what was appropriate. No side glances or passive sighs. Just me and my daughter, weaving through boutique racks with iced coffees in hand and a sense of freedom that felt new, yet deeply familiar. We tried on everything. Structured blazers, high-waisted skirts, silk blouses. But when Eva stepped out of the fitting room in a sharp, tailored ivory dress with gold buttons and a crisp high neckline, I knew. She didn't need to say a word. The way she stood, chin slightly lifted, hands resting at her sides, she looked every bit like the woman she was becoming. The kind of woman who didn't need permission to take up space. It's perfect, I said, my voice catching just a little. She looked at the price tag. $1,050. I saw the hesitation flicker across her face. But before she could say a word, I stepped forward and took the dress from her hands. We're doing this your way, I said. No compromises. Not this time. When the welcome brunch finally arrived in late August, we drove up to New Jersey with the dress packed carefully in a garment bag, hanging in the back seat. Eva wore it with her hair swept into a soft chignon, a small pair of pearl studs, and the kind of self-assurance that can't be taught, it has to be earned. The event was held in a spacious garden courtyard on campus. Crisp white tablecloths, sparkling cider, classical music drifting through the air. Parents mingled while students introduced each other, forming what would become their new circle, their new world. And right in the center of it all was Eva. I watched her glide from table to table, shaking hands with professors, smiling at fellow students, asking questions with genuine curiosity. She carried herself with the calm dignity of someone who'd been tested early and chosen not to be broken by it. Daniel stood beside me, quiet at first. Then I noticed his hand move to his cheek, brushing something away. She's incredible, he said. She is, I agreed. She always was. Judith just didn't see it. As the afternoon continued, a woman approached me near the punch table. She was elegant gray hair pulled into a sleek knot, wearing a navy silk dress that looked expensive but tasteful. She held out her hand with a warm smile. "You're Ava's mother, aren't you?" she asked. I nodded, smiling. "Yes, Claire Whitmore. She's remarkable," the woman said. "My niece sent me her video. It went viral, you know? I showed it to my daughter, told her this is what confidence looks like. This is how you stand up for yourself with grace." My heart swelled. "She gets it from her grandmother," I replied instinctively, then paused. I smiled and corrected myself. Her real grandmother, my mom, the one who believed girls should make their own choices. She laughed lightly and nodded. She'd be proud. I believed she would be. My mother had passed when Eva was just 5, but she always encouraged independence, strength, and softness to coexist. She would have loved this version of Eva, the one who had learned, by 18, what many women didn't discover until their 30s. How to say no, how to walk away, how to rise with dignity, even when someone tries to clip your wings. Judith never reached out again. Not after the call, not after the video, not even when the box with the altered dress arrived at her home. She didn't write, she didn't call. But a week later, A letter arrived, one of those formal envelopes with her embossed Charleston return address in the top left corner. Inside, there was no note, no apology, just a check, $750, written out to Daniel, signed in her tight, slanted cursive. We didn't cash it. Instead, Eva framed it, mounted it on a piece of black mat board, and hung it right above her dorm desk in her new residence hall. At the top, in gold embossed lettering, she placed a label that read, "What it costs to underestimate me." When I saw it during move-in weekend, I couldn't stop smiling. That framed check wasn't about money. It was a symbol, a quiet declaration that no one, not even family, would have the final say on her worth again. Now, a year later, I'm sitting in our sunroom in Pennsylvania, writing this with a cup of tea and a soft summer breeze rolling through the open windows. Moose lies curled at my feet. Daniel is outside, repainting the porch again. He insists it's become his yearly therapy. And Eva? She's home for the summer after finishing her first year at Princeton with honors. She's already been offered a paid internship with a policy think tank in DC. Last night, we sat on the back deck with string lights twinkling above us, and she told me, "I'm not angry anymore. Not even at Grandma. I just feel stronger. Like I earned something no one can take." And she has. See, revenge doesn't always come in the form of fire or fury. Sometimes it's measured in choices, in boundaries respected, in peace reclaimed. Sometimes it's not loud at all, it's quiet and sharp, like the edge of a pearl-handled knife. Eva didn't need to scream to make herself heard. She just needed to rise. Thank you for reading Claire's story. If it resonated with you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own strength, please like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means the world, and your voice helps stories like this reach others who've been silenced or underestimated.